In Wisconsin, obviously, water is one of our prized resources.
It is the most valuable asset that this community has.
I think people see the value of having good, clean water and a beautiful scenic landscape, and they define our town.
If we don't take care of the waters today, we're not going to have the water resources that we currently have in just a few years.
We'd see an adverse impact on our local economy as well as a real degradation of the quality of life. It would be a significant loss to our community.
Water, 70% of the Earth's surface, up to 90% of our body's vital organs. It is the essence of life itself. The hydrologic cycle of rain, followed by evaporation and condensation, has sustained our planet for billions of years. Under natural conditions, rain and snow fall on forests and meadows, soak into the ground, and are purified underground by natural process on their way into the groundwater table or nearby streams and lakes. The next time you're in a rainstorm, watch where the water goes. Does it soak into the ground, form a puddle, or flow off toward a storm drain? The precipitation that does not soak into the ground or evaporate is called stormwater runoff. It flows over the ground surface and into storm drains and ditches that empty directly into our local waterways, and that is how problems can develop. A variety of created surfaces now cover much of our communities. Most of these surfaces are impervious, which means water cannot pass through them. Even home lawns absorb far less than natural areas do. A high percentage of rainwater and snowmelt is prevented from following the natural cleansing course into the soil.
As we pave more roadways, we add more rooftops, driveways, parking lots, it short circuits that natural cycle, the natural water cycle, and increases stormwater to the point where we now need to do something with it.
These impervious surfaces also act as a speed ramp, increasing the volume, velocity, and power of the flowing water. That rushing water takes the fast lane to low-lying areas and receiving waters, easily carrying debris and pollutants with it.
There is a problem. It affects our environment, it creates erosion, adds pollutants to the bodies of water, chokes off your favorite lake or river.
As the development becomes more and more intense in some of these urban areas, we lose a lot of the filtering capacity, a lot of the ability of the environment itself to treat the runoff, and we find the runoff going directly into some of the rivers, lakes, and streams and causing contamination problems.
As you can see, the old concept of stormwater being primarily a flooding and drainage issue no longer stands. Now, stormwater is recognized as a major contributor of pollutants to the surface waters of our nation. This type of pollution is sometimes called non-point source pollution because it comes not from a single discharge pipe at a factory, but from a wide variety of sources dispersed over the landscape, resulting from our own everyday activities, even in our own driveways and backyards.
What we're finding is that the non-point runoff, the runoff from farm fields and from municipalities, becomes a bigger and bigger issue in our waterways. In the past, a lot of the focus has been on flooding and volume control, and now they need to balance the flooding along with the water quality concerns, and that's a challenge for many of the municipalities.
With that in mind, these 13 towns, villages, cities, and counties in the lower Chippewa River Basin have united as the Chippewa Valley Stormwater Forum. Our goal is to protect our priceless waterways, the lakes, streams, rivers, creeks, and wetlands that drain the areas where we live, work, and play. We call our program Rain to Rivers, Wise Choices for Cleaner Waters.
We all have our own programs, but through working together through the Chippewa Valley Stormwater Forum, we've been able to come together and share all of the information and all of the programs that each of us is doing. We're able to hear about what other counties are doing, and it gives us all ideas. So we definitely work together that way.
It's not surprising that the waters of the Chippewa River Valley have always played an important role in the lives of the area's residents. What might be surprising is how that role has changed over the centuries.
The Chippewa River
Started out as a highway. The Indians used it with their canoes, and the early explorers used it that way too. The forests were too dense to travel through. They had their few Indian trails, but the general travel was up and down the river.
Toward the latter part of the 19th century, the rivers of Wisconsin began transporting not just people, but logs from the vast forests of white pine to the north. Then, as years went by, the sawmills were replaced by paper mills, and rushing waters were harnessed to provide electricity to some for the first time. The local economies flourished, but at the expense of the rivers.
You know, when this area was first settled by Europeans, we used to think of the rivers as transportation networks. Then we started to think of them as sort of the back of the enterprise, something where we would throw our trash, throw our sewage, throw the entrails from the meatpacking plants.
Stagecoach lines and people followed the road. And the river sort of became the back alley, and all the trash was pushed over the bank, and it was kind of an unsightly place. And when I was young, we didn't swim much in the Chippewa River. It was considered to be pretty scummy.
And when I was a kid, there was so much silt and organic matter. I think part of that was coming from the paper plant, that the rocks were all had this, I don't know, it had this green algae growth on it.
Fortunately, there eventually came a greater environmental awareness and more free time for outdoor recreation. The original green industry started to develop.
You know, I think one of the big changes from the old days is that beginning in the 60s, we really started to think about the rivers as natural beauty, as resources, as recreation.
Waterways are very much a part of recreation, of scenic beauty, of actually tax dollars coming in because of their aesthetics and because of their recreation potential. And so all cities need to do that.
As you'll soon see, there's a lot we can all do in our own communities and even our own yards to help keep our waterways clean.
So we get an inch of rain once in a while. That's not a big deal, is it?
You might be surprised.
Most people notice the problems from the larger rainfall events where we have flooding and we have erosion. But most of the pollutants get washed into our waters from the smaller events because we have so many more of them. 80% of our rainfall comes from the events that are 1 inch or less. And so the things that we can do to treat those smaller runoff events go a long way to improving the water quality of our rivers and streams.
In fact, just a simple quarter-acre lot with a 1,000 square foot driveway and a 1,500 square foot house contributes about 1,500 gallons of stormwater runoff with a 1 inch rainfall. That's a pretty significant amount of water that's going to be running off down to the ditches, into the tributaries, and into your streams or lakes.
When just 1 inch of rain falls on an entire city like Altoona, it is suddenly dealing with about 75 million gallons of rainfall. For Chippewa Falls or Menominee, approximately 200 million gallons. And Eau Claire would get nearly 3 times that, 560 million gallons, enough to fill a football field-sized hole a quarter of a mile deep. Multiply those numbers by the 32 inches of precipitation we receive annually, and now we're talking about close to 18 billion gallons of rainfall in Eau Claire alone. Naturally, some rain soaks into the ground, and some forms puddles that evaporate. But as the amount of rainfall increases and the ground becomes saturated, as much as 50% of that rain can become runoff during large rainfall events. That leaves millions of gallons flowing across lawns and pavement on the way to our storm sewers.
Why should I worry? I mean, I don't have a flooding problem.
People need to realize that water quality becomes the main issue at this point and not necessarily flooding.
As we've seen, stormwater is a community problem with 2 main components directly related to urban development: the increased volume and speed of surface runoff and the concentration of numerous pollutants in that runoff. Our storm sewers are like underground rivers beneath our homes, and just like living down by the riverside, whatever you put in this water can go downstream to a neighboring community.
Excuse me, sir, do you know where these drains lead to?
Wouldn't that be the sewage treatment plant?
A lot of people probably don't even consider where water goes when they wash their car or when they water the lawn, when it just goes down the drain out into the street.
They think of it as draining right to a sanitary sewer treatment plant, and that anything that gets in that will naturally be cleaned mechanically.
That's not true. The water that drains off streets goes right straight into the waterway.
That's right. Stormwater is not treated or even filtered of trash. And the drains in the streets send everything that goes into them right into our area's streams and lakes. In other words, what goes in here flows out there. This is the Chippewa River, one of the dozens of rivers, creeks, or lakes that stormwater in our area flows into. The area that drains to each of them is called its watershed, and there are 22 watersheds in the lower Chippewa Basin. You can go to our website and find which watershed you live in. Remember, what you let get into the stormwater runoff might end up in the stream or river that flows through your neighborhood. One of water's greatest abilities has now become one of modern society's problems. Water is the best natural solvent in existence. That means it can dissolve and carry away a bit of nearly everything it touches. Consider what it did to the Grand Canyon. Now consider how our daily activities often cover surfaces with a coating of unpleasant and often hazardous materials, pet waste, toxic metal particles, pesticides, fertilizers, leaking oil, gasoline and grease, harmful bacteria, excess nutrients, waste paper, trash, and more.
This is Duncan Creek, which winds through the city of Chippewa Falls. Most people don't realize that a lot of the city's storm sewers drain into this river, and little things that you do on your driveway and on your lawn can end up here.
Well, in a situation like this where you've got a river running through an urban area, you've got a lot of runoff coming from hard-packed impervious surfaces like driveways, roadways, rooftops, hard-packed turf lawns. All of that runoff is coming immediately into the river via the storm sewer, and so we're concerned about what that water is carrying with it. It can be carrying leaves and debris from the land. It can be carrying motor oil from your driveway. All those things go right into the river, pretty much intact, and can harm the water quality.
Well, leaves are basically full of nutrients, so when leaves break down, they end up leaching out nitrogen and phosphorus, and if you blow them out into the curb area or out into the road, they're going to flow down into the storm drain, end up in your rivers and lakes, and that's going to break down and it's going to give the river or lake a surge of nutrients at that time.
Bronze Bay here in the city of Eau Claire on Half Moon Lake has a wide diversity of wildlife and plant life. Here you can see the cattails and the lily pads that we have, and this is all a good natural thing, and the rainfall falling on it helps enhance that. However, there's more things below the surface of this lake that can cause problems. We have phosphorus in the water column, and that facilitates a weed growth through most of the lake, and the sediments that come in from our urban storm sewers.
Urban communities aren't the only sources of pollution. Rural areas can also play a role, with waste from farm animals and fields treated with fertilizers and pesticides. Every time it rains, the accumulation of pollutants can be washed into local waterways. As portions of the rural landscape are chiseled away to form sites for new housing or business development, the environmental effects can be sudden and widespread. Improperly set up construction sites can be a leading cause of water quality problems. With vegetation stripped away during construction, bare soil is exposed to the surface and becomes susceptible to erosion during rain.
During the construction process, we have quite a bit of sediment that can leave the site and enter water resources to the tune of, for every 1 acre that's developed, we may have a dump truck and a half of sediment entering our streams and lakes.
But with the use of several established construction safeguards and wise public planning, a community's economic development and growth can happen with minimal impact on the environment.
Economic development is important for our communities, and with economic development comes new construction. And it's that new construction that is so important for local governments to help manage to ensure that runoff from those construction sites does not pollute our waterways.
It's important that people realize that there are ordinances that dictate how stormwater is managed for each construction site.
The good news is there's both a greater awareness and greater use of the many methods available for controlling erosion from construction sites.
Builders are now required to install practices such as silt fences like these to trap sediment that washes off construction sites before it flows into area waterways. and they cover bare soils with straw mats to prevent it from washing off the surface. They're also required to install other practices that keep soil and debris from entering the streets, such as stone tracking pads. On a larger scale throughout our communities, new neighborhoods are now designed and built with enhanced water handling capabilities already in place. Stormwater retention ponds are designed to store a neighborhood's runoff long enough for the water and pollutants to settle out and reduce flood risk. Some ponds are also designed to promote infiltration of stored water into the ground, where it's purified and recharges groundwater.
The standard way we manage stormwater is to get it off the land as soon as possible, get it off the streets and off the driveways and everything else, and get it into the storm sewers and into the river. And when we do that, it takes all of the pollutants that come from the land into the river very quickly. So there are some alternative methods for managing stormwater known as low-impact development, and those deal with leaving the water on the land as long as we can and having it infiltrate down into the groundwater rather than going right into the storm sewer and right into the river.
Throughout the region, communities are taking a number of steps, large and small, to control and treat runoff before it can reach the waterways.
This parking lot is an example of what can be done to incorporate swales and vegetation to help the water soak into the ground and to be filtered before it enters the storm sewer.
There are many things a community can do to lessen the amount of water that's running off of their streets and into the lakes and rivers. For instance, here in River Falls, we've narrowed up a street and have added a small grassy depression. This depression allows water to flow down the curb line and into this area where it can then soak into the ground. Before these streets and houses were here, when it rained, most of the water would flow into the ground. However, now, as you can see, the water accumulates on the pavements and then eventually flows off into the storm sewers and into our local lakes and rivers. One way to prevent this from happening and to allow the water to soak into the ground as it did before is to install pervious pavers, which are very similar to regular pavers except they have small bumps on the edges here, which when you put the pavers together creates a space which can then be filled with a small granular material which allows the water to soak through it. And as you can see, the length of this alley flowing to this area, virtually all the water disappears as soon as it hits the pavers. We've also started installing rain gardens around the city, and we're utilizing different styles. This particular one uses landscaping rocks, rose shrubs, and other types of shrubs.
Environmental issues are important to the residents of the city of Menominee. With the Red Cedar River and Lake Mahnomen in the heart of the city, we're implementing such things in our stormwater management plan as installing rain gardens. This is a demonstration rain garden that we worked together with the University of UW Stout and putting it in to help treat water that's running off of Phelan Park before it enters the Red Cedar River.
UW Eau Claire has also become involved with the rain garden to help handle the runoff from this large campus parking lot. University staff, students, and community volunteers joined together to help make it happen.
We have a lot of water, a lot of momentum, and a lot of pollutants from the cars here. And that was all coming down to this one site. It moves into that grass area and then slowly moves down to this, which is much better than having it burst out here. These plants, you'll notice that there's some roots on the bottom here. Feel free to kind of rip those apart when you're putting them in. See how they're nice and long? The roots on these plants, some of them go down 16 feet. Just try to get as many as you can in there, as dense as possible. Like I said, a foot apart, that's pretty dense. Here's the pink border, just stay inside the pink. There was a project to improve this parking lot, and so they did. They made it all to a proper grade.
We talked to the engineering department about the idea of moving the sidewalk over and creating a swale in here that we could use for water filtration on a grassy area.
The sidewalk used to actually go straight along the trees here, along the plantings. And instead of doing that and having a big grass strip on the other side, they moved the sidewalk out, and this was reconfigured to hold water runoff from the parking lot.
This parking lot over here is gigantic, and 2/3 of it drains right into this spot.
The rain garden idea has always been kind of in the back of our minds, but we've never dealt with a rain garden.
We went searching for a little bit of money and found some with parking who putting the scuppers that you see.
I designed 3 scuppers. They're not going to take all the water, but they'll take up a good chunk of it and divert it in here. And the idea of the rain garden then is to catch some of that water, slow it down, filter it, and then before it goes into the storm sewer.
The grounds department for campus, they had a role in this as well, in that they helped prepare the area. So all of aspects of campus have been working on it. And we're finding that there were different groups throughout the community that have interest in this as well. Some of them have showed up to help plant also.
And we're very happy to be here, and I think this is an awesome project. So.
I don't know too much about rain gardens, and this is actually my first opportunity to plant a rain garden, so I'm excited to be here and learn more.
Well, my kids homeschool, so this is our school today. Planting a rain garden.
The plants that were used here are native to Wisconsin. I chose them in this planting because I wanted a real beautiful garden. Quite a gradient in heights. The plants also have a lot of texture changes. They also bloom at different times. We have ones that will be blooming in the spring all the way through late into the frost. Now we're giving them a lot of opportunity, a lot of different species of plants to all interact. So they work as a community, and so I think that's a pretty great aspect. You know, this is so simple. It's something anybody can do in their own yard, just with runoff from your roof. It can be as small as like 10 by 10, and you just add some little plants in it. It needs to be kind of a depression in the ground where your rainwater, your house would run into. A garden that was 10 by 10, that's 100 plants. It's $100. I think it's fairly cheap, considering what you're getting out of it.
It's proactive planning and community-wide efforts such as these that are the keys to better controlling the stormwater problems we face. There are many positive actions we can all take to turn back the tide of troubled waters and greatly reduce our effect on the environment. Here are just some of the things you can do in your own yard and neighborhood. Conserve water. Keep your rain. Maximize infiltration in your yard by directing rainwater away from paved areas. Plant a rain garden filled with attractive grasses and wildflowers to maximize water absorption into the ground. If you can't have a rain garden, aim your downspouts away from the pavement and onto grassy areas or into a rain barrel.
When managing stormwater, every little bit helps, such as installing rain barrels at home, such as this one here, which help control the rainwater, store it for future use, versus letting it run down your driveway and carrying contaminants to the stream.
Be a pooper scooper. Pick up after your pets. You can flush pet waste down the toilet or bury it 4 to 6 inches deep in the yard. Do not put it in your vegetable garden or compost that will be used for your garden. Keep leaves and grass clippings out of the street, gutter, drainage ditches, and storm drains. Let your lawn reach a height of 2 to 3 inches to better capture rainwater. When you do mow, leave the lawn clippings on and sweep up grass or leaves that land on the sidewalk, driveway, or street. Use leaves and/or grass clippings as mulch or add it to a compost pile. Yard waste can be tilled directly into gardens or flower beds. Or, if you'd rather dispose of it and live in a city or village, check your community's website to find out when the next leaf, brush, and grass clipping pickup is. Kick your chemical dependency. Use non-toxic alternatives to conventional household chemicals whenever possible. When not possible, properly dispose of those chemicals such as oil-based paints, cleaning chemicals, pesticides, solvents, batteries, and disinfectants. Never dispose of hazardous chemicals in the storm drain. Learn more about how to properly dispose of hazardous chemicals through your local Clean Sweep program.
It's a great way for people to get rid of all the things they don't want that's cluttering up their garage, that might spill and run out over their driveway.
Practice careful car care. Regularly maintain your car or truck. Keep it tuned up and fix any oil, radiator, or transmission leak as soon as you see them. A rainstorm can easily carry away leaked oil, antifreeze, and brake fluids. If you change your own oil, make sure to take the used oil to a recycling collection site. Never pour it behind the garage, on the driveway to kill weeds, or down the storm drain. How you keep your vehicle clean also has an impact. Washing your car in the driveway can create contamination problems if the dirty, soapy runoff can wash down a storm drain, picking up oil and other pollutants as it goes. Try washing your car on the lawn, or better yet, take it to a commercial car wash that sends its dirty water to a wastewater treatment plant. Don't overfeed your lawn. Runoff fertilizers can feed lake or pond plants to the point that lakes and streams are choked by algae and weeds, making them unpleasant for recreation and depleting oxygen levels to the point it becomes dangerous for fish. The middle number on bags of fertilizer refers to the percentage of phosphorus inside. That should be 0. Its use is now banned in Wisconsin except in specific, limited situations such as first-year lawns and where the soil is found to be low in phosphorus.
You should make sure that you get a soil test before you ever put any fertilizer on your lawn. You can do that at through any local University Extension office. Just bring a bag of soil in and they'll send it right into the lab and you'll get the results back for usually under $20.
If soil tests show your lawn does need fertilizer, apply according to manufacturer's instructions. Don't double the dose. Use them only when necessary, only as little as possible, and never when rain is expected to fall soon. Similarly, restrict your use of pesticides. Runoff pesticides can harm living things in water. Use proper containers for trash and recyclables. Don't litter or put trash into the street or gutter where it can be washed into the storm sewer system. Cigarette butts, paper cups, and similar items can be carried intact into our waterways and remain there for years. Keep soil in your yard and out of our waterways. Bare soil easily washes into the storm drains. Cover exposed soil with seed and mulch as soon as possible. Cover piles of soil for your yard or garden with a tarp until you're ready to use it. If you're building a new home, choose a builder who takes extra care not to track mud onto the streets, one who properly installs and maintains silt fences, and who utilizes other proven methods that can prevent your soil from washing off your lot during construction. Be a watershed watchdog. If you see a potential stormwater problem, such as a clogged storm drain or trash in the gutter, do what you can to clear the area. If the problem is beyond your capabilities, such as pollutants washing into a storm sewer or uncontrolled erosion from a construction site, contact your local municipal or county public works department. Make friends with your watershed. Join a local watershed or conservation group and help clean up waterways in your area. Check out our website for links to local organizations working to clean up our waterways. As you can see, a small number of simple and easy steps can help ensure that only rain goes down the drain. The more we can prevent the problems at their source, the less need and expense there'll be to come up with solutions later. We must stay committed to providing effective solutions to all stormwater challenges that face our community. What we do in our own backyards and our own communities can make all the difference to the quality of our lakes and streams. It's up to you, it's up to all of us to make it happen. Rain to rivers, wise choices for cleaner waters.